Ava Monroe hadn't planned on thinking it all this weekend. That was the whole point of the trip. The Banana Island shimmered like a secret the city kept for only a few. Quiet roads, manicured palms, and glassy water hugging the edges of private estates that looked more like curated dreams than real homes. The waterfront villa Ella had booked sat confidently along the lagoon, all white stone, floor-to-ceiling windows and understated luxury. No noise, no chaos, no reminders of the grueling life Ava had left behind back home. Just sun, silence, and her best friend. Ava stepped out of the car and inhaled slowly, the humid Lagos air warm against her skin. Somewhere behind her, Ella was laughing, already halfway through a phone call, already in her element. Ava smiled despite herself. Ella had always been like this, effortless, magnetic, the kind of woman who belonged in beautiful places. Ava had come because she needed to breathe. Single motherhood had a way of shrinking your world without asking permission. Days became routines. Routines became responsibilities. And somewhere in between, Ava had forgotten what it felt like to be just a woman, not a mother, not the dependable one, just herself. This weekend, Ella had said, gripping Ava's hands tightly at the airport, "You don't worry about anyone but you. I've got everything covered." Ava hadn't asked what everything meant. She found out the moment they walked into the villa. The space was open and impossibly elegant, neutral tones, soft lighting, and modern art that whispered money instead of shouting it. Ava was admiring the view when she heard a familiar male voice behind her say, "You're early." Her body reacted before her mind did. Ava turned slowly and there he was, Liam Monroe. Time did something strange in that moment, stretching and tightening all at once. The boy she remembered, quiet, awkward, always buried in books, was gone. In his place stood a man who looked carved rather than born. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in an effortlessly expensive linen shirt with the sleeves rolled just enough to suggest control rather than ease. His face was sharper now, more disciplined. His presence filled the room without him trying, and his eyes, dark, observant, and unreadable, lifted and locked onto hers. Something in Ava's chest shifted. "Liam," she said, her voice softer than she intended. Surprise flickered across his face, quickly masked by composure, but she saw it. The pause, the recognition. "Ava," he said, "it's been a while. Too long." Ella squealed and rushed between them, throwing her arms around her twin brother. "You didn't tell me you'd be here already." "I had meetings nearby," Liam replied calmly. "I stopped by to drop something off." Ava barely heard the rest. Her heartbeat was loud in her ears, her senses uncomfortably alert. She told herself to relax, to remember that this was Ella's brother, off limits entirely, unquestionably off limits. Yet, when Liam looked back at her, something unspoken passed between them, recognition, curiosity, awareness. Ava broke eye contact first. The afternoon unfolded in laughter and unpacking champagne glasses clinking as sunlight spilled across the villa. Ava tried to ground herself in the moment, helping Ella arrange flowers, laughing at old stories, pretending her skin didn't hum every time Liam moved through the room. He didn't linger. He excused himself politely, promising to return later with takeout recommendations and a boat captain's number. "Was that weird for you?" Ella asked casually once he left. Ava shrugged. "Seeing him again? A little. He's different." Ella laughed. "Tell me about it. He's been different since money found him." Ava smiled, relieved by the normalcy of the conversation. Surely Ella hadn't noticed anything. The evening arrived gently, Lagos glowing in the distance as lights flickered on across the lagoon. Ava changed into a simple dress, letting the breeze cool her skin as she stood on the balcony alone. She should have gone inside. Instead, she heard footsteps behind her. "I thought you might be out here." She turned. Liam stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, posture relaxed in a way that felt intentional. The city lights reflected faintly in his eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Couldn't stop thinking," he replied, then paused. "About how long it's been." Ava nodded. "Life happens." He studied her, his gaze slower now, more personal. "You look settled." The word landed strangely. Ava thought of school lunches, bedtime routines, and the quiet strength built out of necessity. "I am," she said carefully. "Mostly." Silence stretched between them, not awkward, just full. The breeze lifted a strand of hair across Ava's face. Liam reached out without thinking, his fingers brushing her cheek as he tucked it back. The touch was brief, electric, and they both froze. "I shouldn't have done that," he said quietly. Ava swallowed. "No, you shouldn't have." Neither of them moved away. The city hummed below, distant traffic, blending with the soft lap of water against stone. Ava felt the weight of everything she was risking and everything she had already lost in life. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Yes, Liam agreed, it is. He still didn't step back. Their kiss wasn't rushed. It was hesitant, almost restrained, as if both were waiting for the other to pull away. When neither did, the restraint snapped. Ava's body responded before her logic could catch up. His hands were warm, grounding, and his presence was overwhelming in a way that felt dangerous and intoxicating. She pulled back first, breathless. We can't. Liam's forehead rested against hers. I know. Yet when she slipped past him and retreated inside, her hands were shaking. Later that night, Ava lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every second. She knew better. She had responsibilities, a life built on stability, not risk. But something had already changed. Down the hall, a door opened softly. Ava's breath caught as Liam stood in her doorway, eyes dark, expression stripped of control. This doesn't leave this room, he said quietly. If you say no, I walk away. Ava's heart pounded. She thought of rules, of loyalty, of consequences. Then she thought of how alive she felt in that moment. Just tonight, she said. Liam nodded once. Outside, Lagos kept moving, unaware that inside a quiet villa on Banana Island, two lives had just crossed a line they would never be able to erase. And as Ava closed her eyes, one thought echoed louder than all the others. This trip was already costing her more than she had ever planned. Morning arrived quietly, the kind that felt almost apologetic. Ava woke to soft light filtering through sheer curtains, the lagoon outside glassy and calm, as though nothing reckless had happened beneath the same roof just hours earlier. For a few seconds she lay still, allowing herself the illusion that the night before had been a dream, something her body had imagined in a moment of weakness. Then she felt it. The echo of his touch, the memory of his breath against her skin, the unmistakable certainty that what had happened was very real. Ava sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around herself, her chest tightening not with regret exactly, but with awareness. One night, that was all it had been meant to be. A mistake wrapped in moonlight and poor judgment, a line crossed and immediately erased. She repeated the thought like a mantra as she showered, dressed, and tied her hair into a neat knot. One night was supposed to be enough. By the time she walked into the kitchen, Ella was already there, barefoot, radiant, and humming softly as she poured coffee. Good morning, Ella said brightly. You look rested. Ava forced a smile. Didn't sleep much. She cleared her throat nervously. Ella shrugged. Same. Jet lag or excitement? Probably, Ava replied, reaching for a mug, her fingers trembling just slightly. She kept her eyes on the counter, afraid that guilt might show on her face like a neon sign. She told herself to breathe, to act normal, to remember that no one knew and no one was supposed to know. Liam didn't appear at breakfast. That should have relieved her, but instead, it unsettled her deeply. The day unfolded with a kind of cruel ease, brunch at a private terrace overlooking the water, a slow drive through Akoi in Ella's sleek SUV, and shopping at boutiques that smelled of money and restraint. Ava laughed when expected to, nodded when appropriate, and reminded herself repeatedly that this was temporary. She could go home, and she would go home. But avoidance became its own form of torment. Every time Ava thought she had escaped the tension, Liam appeared, leaning casually against a doorway, stepping into the room just as she turned around, his presence sending a sharp awareness straight through her body. They barely spoke, and they barely looked at each other. And yet, everything between them spoke loudly. A brush of fingers when passing a glass, a shared glance held half a second too long. The way Liam's jaw tightened when she laughed at something another man said was completely unbearable. By the third day, Ava felt stretched thin, her nerves pulled taut beneath her skin. She cornered Liam late that evening in the hallway, her voice low. We need to talk. His eyes flicked down the corridor before settling on her. Not here. Then where? She whispered. 'Cause pretending nothing happened is making me lose my mind. He studied her for a moment, then nodded once. 5 minutes, the balcony. She paced while waiting, the city glowing below, her thoughts racing faster than she could control. When Liam stepped out beside her, the space felt instantly smaller. This was supposed to end, Ava said, crossing her arms. One night. I know, he replied calmly. You said it yourself. I meant it, she said. I still do. The words should have settled things, but they didn't. Then why do you keep looking at me like that? She asked. Liam exhaled slowly, his composure slipping just enough to reveal the raw tension beneath. Because wanting you doesn't disappear just because it shouldn't exist. Ava's breath caught. We can't do this. I don't live the kind of life where secrets stay contained. His gaze softened. I know you're a mother. The way he said it, without judgment and without pity, made something ache deeply in her chest. I didn't mean for it to happen, she admitted, but now it has. So we stop, he said, even as his hand rested against the railing inches from hers before it becomes something else. Ava nodded. Neither moved. The silence stretched until it was heavy, until her resolve thinned under the immense weight of proximity and unspoken desire. Liam turned to her slowly. This is the last time we talk about it. The words felt like a dare. The kiss that followed wasn't cautious this time. It was hungry, charged with everything they had been actively denying. Ava felt herself unraveling, logic slipping through her fingers as Liam pulled her closer. They didn't rush to the bedroom. They stood there, framed by city lights, in the quiet roar of temptation, hands exploring, mouths learning. It wasn't just physical this time. It was personal, intimate, and dangerous. Afterward, Ava lay beside him in the low glow of dawn, her head resting against his chest. This changes things, she murmured. Yes, he said simply. She traced a slow line along his arm. You don't do this. You don't get involved. I don't, he agreed, which is why this is a problem. Ava lifted her head, meeting his eyes. Then why are you still here? Liam hesitated. It was brief, but she noticed. Because I don't want this to end the way I've ended everything else, he admitted. Something warm and frightening bloomed in her chest. The next days blurred into a pattern that felt both exhilarating and exhausting. Stolen moments, locked doors, and late-night conversations that dipped just close enough to vulnerability before retreating. Ava learned the strict rules of Liam's world: privacy, control, restraint, and how easily they bent around her. She told herself she wasn't falling. But she noticed how intently he listened when she talked about her child, how his hand lingered longer when she was tired, and how his voice softened only for her. Liam, for his part, found himself unraveling in ways he didn't understand. Ava didn't need him to perform or protect. She existed fully, with a strength shaped by responsibility, and a softness that didn't ask for permission. It terrified him. You deserve more than this, he told her one night. Ava smiled sadly. Then stop giving me less. He didn't answer. What was meant to end quietly had grown teeth. And as Ava lay awake that night, listening to the city breathe, she knew the truth she had been desperately avoiding. Walking away was no longer simple. It was becoming entirely impossible. What began as hesitation turned into intention. Ava noticed the shift the moment Liam sent her the address. It wasn't the villa this time or a stolen hour tucked between Ella's plans. It was an apartment, quiet, discreet, perched high above Ikoyi with a view that swallowed the city whole. The message came without explanation, without preamble, as if they had silently agreed to stop pretending this was accidental. She stared at her phone longer than she should have, and then she went. The building rose clean and imposing from a private street, security tight, anonymity assured. Ava felt her pulse quicken as the elevator climbed, the soft hum filling the space between her frantic thoughts. When Liam opened the door, something in his expression told her this wasn't just another escape. This was a choice. Inside, the apartment was restrained elegance, neutral walls, low lighting, and furniture chosen for comfort rather than display. It felt lived in but controlled, exactly like him. He took her coat without a word, his fingers brushing her wrists just long enough to make her inhale sharply. We shouldn't be here, she said, even as she stepped fully inside. I know, he replied, closing the door. You can leave. She didn't. Their time together became a deliberate and dangerously easy pattern. Late nights when Ella thought Ava was sleeping, early mornings when the city still yawned awake, short drives and longer silences formed a rhythm built entirely around secrecy. Ikoyi held them gently, offering absolute privacy in exchange for discretion. But secrecy carried an immense weight. Ava felt it most when she was with Ella at brunches, filled with laughter, during shared memories, and amidst easy trust. The guilt sat heavy in her chest, sharp and insistent. Ella spoke freely, joked about her brother's rigidity, and teased Ava about needing to relax more. Every single word felt like a test Ava was miserably failing. You've been distant, Ella said one afternoon, studying her closely over coffee. Ava forced a laugh. Just tired? Ella reached across the table, squeezing her hand warmly. You don't have to carry everything alone. The irony nearly broke her right then and there. Liam never asked her to lie, and he never demanded anything at all, which somehow made it worse. He existed in stolen moments, careful boundaries, and an unspoken understanding that this was all he could offer. I can't promise you anything, he told her, one night as they stood by the window, the city glowing below. Not more than this. Ava nodded, though her chest ached terribly. I know. She didn't tell him how much it hurt, In her presence, Liam found himself unraveling in ways he had spent years preventing. Ava wasn't impressed by his wealth or swayed by his control. She saw through him with a quiet clarity that left him completely exposed. She asked questions he didn't want to answer, and she noticed things he tried desperately to hide. "You're always braced," she said once, her fingers tracing the rigid tension in his shoulder. "Like you're waiting for something to go wrong." His jaw tightened. "Experience teaches you to expect it." "And does it ever get exhausting?" she asked softly. He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled her closer, as if physical proximity could silence the truths he wasn't ready to face. Their connection grew heavier, more consuming. The physical chemistry never faded, but something else took root: shared silences, unguarded laughter, and moments where Ava rested her head against his chest and felt briefly safe. That frightened her. She had learned long ago what it meant to love someone who couldn't stay. She had built her entire life around stability, around choosing certainty over longing, and yet, here she was, falling for a man who existed only in margins and shadows. "You're going to get hurt," she told herself one night, lying awake in the apartment while Liam slept peacefully beside her. She already was. Liam, meanwhile, found his strict rules slipping away. He began to think of Ava in the future tense, then stopped himself sharply. He imagined introducing her to spaces he had kept closed, then reminded himself exactly why he didn't do permanence. But the desire to claim her, to remove the secrecy, and to erase the risk pressed against him constantly. "Why do you look at me like that?" Ava asked once, catching his gaze lingering too long. "Like what?" he asked. "Like you're deciding something." He looked away. "Because I am." But he never told her what he was deciding. Lagos watched them quietly. The city offered glamour and shadow in equal measure. Dimly lit lounges, quiet streets after midnight, and the hum of wealth moving unseen. They blended easily into its rhythm, two people hiding in plain sight. Yet Ava felt the tension building, an unspoken countdown ticking beneath every single kiss. She feared what loving Liam would cost her, and he feared what wanting her might force him to confront. Still, neither walked away. Because in the spaces between guilt and restraint, desire and fear, they had found something rare. And letting go of it felt far more dangerous than holding on, setting the stage for a collision that would soon shatter their carefully constructed world. The breaking point didn't arrive loudly. It came quietly in fragments. Missed calls Ava couldn't return, conversations cut short, and moments when Liam's eyes hardened just as she thought she saw something real flicker there. It came in the way she started planning her days around stolen hours instead of certainty, and in the way her chest tightened whenever she imagined a future that didn't include shadows. Ava had always known this would catch up to her. She just hadn't known how heavy it would feel when it did. They were in the Ikoyi apartment when it finally surfaced, the city glowing beyond the windows, the air thick with unspoken things. Liam stood near the counter, sleeves rolled up, focused on pouring wine like it was something he could control. Ava watched him for a long moment before speaking. "I can't keep doing this like it doesn't matter." His hand stilled. "It matters." "That's not what I mean," she said, her voice steady but strained. "I need to know where this is going." Liam didn't turn around immediately. When he did, his expression was carefully neutral, the mask she had come to recognize. "I've been honest," he said. "I told you I can't offer more than this." "You told me you couldn't promise," Ava replied. "That's not the same as refusing to choose." A silence fell between them, sharp and brittle. "I don't make decisions lightly," he said finally. "I don't have the luxury of waiting," she said. "I have a child, a life built on showing up. I can't exist in the margins forever." Something flickered in his eyes then, fear perhaps, or something deeper he didn't have a name for. "Public choices come with consequences," he said quietly. "You don't understand what that means in my world." "Then explain it to me," she said, "because right now all I hear is that I'm convenient." The words landed harder than she intended. Liam's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "Then prove me wrong," she said. The near exposure came 2 nights later. They were leaving a private lounge on Victoria Island, the kind of place where discretion was expected and remembered. Ava had been laughing at something, Liam said, her guard down for once, when a familiar voice cut through the noise. "Ava?" Her blood ran cold. Ella stood a few steps away, eyes bright with surprise, her gaze flicking between them. Ava cleared her throat nervously. "What are you doing here?" Ella asked. Ava's heart pounded as Liam stepped back instinctively, distance snapping into place between them like a practiced reflex. "Just business," Liam said smoothly. Ava forced a smile. "We ran into each other." Ella laughed, completely oblivious. Of course you did it. Small city. But as they parted ways, Ava's hands trembled, the adrenaline lingering long after the moment passed. The realization hit her hard. This wasn't just about desire anymore. It was about how close she was to losing everything. Later that night, she lay awake beside Liam, staring at the ceiling. That can't happen again, she said softly. It won't, he replied. But she heard the uncertainty beneath his certainty. The next crack came from Liam himself. It happened unexpectedly on a quiet evening when Ava mentioned her child's school presentation, excitement brightening her voice. Liam listened, his expression unreadable. You'd be good at this, she said gently, being present. His body stiffened. You don't know that. I see it, she replied. You care more than you admit. He sat up abruptly, running a hand through his hair. Care has a cost. So does avoidance, Ava said. He looked at her, then really looked, and something finally gave way. My father taught me what happens when you let people see you, he said quietly. He built everything on appearances. The moment he showed weakness, it was taken from him. Ava stayed silent, letting him continue. I learned early that love is leverage, he said, and I swore I'd never give anyone that kind of power over me. Ava's chest ached. I'm not asking for power. I know, he said. That's what scares me. The honesty unsettled them both, but honesty didn't erase reality. Ava felt the strain everywhere. When Ella spoke freely about family, when she herself had to lie by omission, when guilt settled in her chest like a weight she couldn't shake, she hated what secrecy was turning her into. One afternoon, Ella hugged her tightly, smiling. I don't know what I'd do without you. The words nearly shattered Ava's resolve. That night, she made her decision. I can't keep lying, Ava said, standing in the apartment, her voice calm despite the storm inside her. Not to her, not to myself. Liam watched her, his face unreadable. What are you saying? I'm saying I need more than hidden moments, she replied. And if you can't give that, I need to walk away. The words hurt to say. He took a step toward her, then stopped. The conflict in his eyes was unmistakable. I don't know how to be what you need, he admitted. Ava nodded, tears burning behind her eyes. Then you need to figure out if you want to learn. She turned away before he could answer. Outside, Lagos pulsed on. Brilliant, indifferent, full of lives colliding and consequences, waiting. Ava knew that whatever came next would cost her something. The only question was whether the price of wanting more was worth paying. The test sat on the bathroom counter like a verdict. Ava stared at it for a long time before she allowed herself to breathe. 2 lines, clear, unforgiving, impossible to misread. For a moment, the world narrowed to the sound of her own heartbeat and the hum of the apartment around her. Panic rose first, hot and immediate, followed by a fear so sharp it made her dizzy. Then, unexpectedly, hope slipped in quietly, threading itself through the chaos like a question she wasn't ready to answer. There was no hiding this, no careful arrangement of schedules, no locked doors and no borrowed time. Her hand pressed instinctively to her stomach as she sank onto the edge of the tub, the weight of reality settling into her bones. She had built her life on certainty, on protecting what mattered most. And now, everything, absolutely everything, was about to change. Liam arrived later that evening, his presence filling the apartment before he even spoke. Ava watched him from the kitchen doorway, noting the familiar restraint in his posture, the controlled calm that had always defined him. She wondered how long it would last. We need to talk, she said. He nodded, sensing the gravity in her tone. Okay. They sat across from each other, the space between them taut with unspoken tension. Ava folded her hands in her lap, grounding herself. I'm pregnant, she said. The words hung in the air, fragile and powerful all at once. Liam didn't react the way she expected. There was no denial, no immediate questions, and no visible anger. Instead, he went very still, his gaze fixed on a point just past her shoulder, his jaw tightening, his breath measured as though he were bracing against something internal. Ava felt her chest tighten, uncertainty clawing its way up her throat. Say something, she whispered. He exhaled slowly. How far along? The question startled her. A few weeks. Silence stretched again, thick and heavy. This changes everything, he said finally. Yes, Ava replied. That's the point. He stood abruptly, pacing the room once before stopping near the window, the city lights reflecting faintly in his eyes. Ava watched him, trying to read the storm beneath his composure. I need to be clear, he said, without turning around. I won't disappear. Her breath hitched. But I don't know how to do this, he continued. I don't know how to be what this requires. Ava rose slowly, moving closer. I'm not asking for perfection. I'm asking for honesty. He turned to face her then, conflict etched into every line of his face. You're asking me to dismantle a life I built on control. I'm asking you to show up, she said softly. For a child who didn't ask for any of this, the word child seemed to land harder than anything else. Liam ran a hand through his hair, his composure finally cracking. I spent my life making sure nothing could trap me, nothing could force my hand. And now? Ava asked. Now, he said quietly. I'm terrified that if I do this wrong, I'll become exactly what I swore I wouldn't be. Ava felt tears sting her eyes. I don't need you to have all the answers. I just need you not to run. He stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the tension radiating outward. I'm not running, he said. I'm staying, even if I don't know how yet. It wasn't a declaration of love, but it was something, and right now, it was enough. The fallout Ava feared loomed just beyond the walls of the apartment. Ella. The thought sat heavy in her chest, guilt pressing down until it was almost unbearable. Ava had replayed the moment of truth 1,000 times in her mind. Ella's face, her voice, and the devastating fracture of trust that would follow. There was no version of this that didn't hurt. She chose a quiet afternoon, the villa bathed in soft light, the city unusually calm. Ella sat across from her, flipping through photos on her phone, completely unaware that the ground beneath them was about to violently shift. There's something I need to tell you, Ava said. Ella looked up immediately, concern flashing across her features. What's wrong? Ava's hands trembled as she clasped them tightly together. I've been lying to you. The words fell between them, final and heavy. Ella frowned. About what? Ava closed her eyes briefly. About Liam. The silence that followed was completely deafening. Ella's expression shifted slowly, confusion first, then realization, and then something that looked dangerously close to horror. How? Ella asked. When? Ava's voice shook. It wasn't planned, it wasn't supposed to happen, but it did. And now I'm pregnant. Ella stared at her, the color rapidly draining from her face. You're joking, she whispered. I'm not. The betrayal landed like a physical blow. You knew he was off limits, Ella said, her voice rising in pain. You knew what he meant to me, to my family, I know, Ava said, tears spilling over now, and I hate myself for hurting you, but I couldn't keep lying. Ella stood abruptly, pacing the room, anger and disbelief warring across her face. All this time, every smile, every conversation, you stood there and... I never meant to hurt you, Ava said, her voice breaking. You're my family, too. Ella stopped, turning to face her with eyes cold as ice. Family doesn't do this, the words cut deep, drawing blood. I don't expect forgiveness, Ava said quietly. I just needed you to know the truth. Ella laughed bitterly. Congratulations, you've succeeded. She turned on her heel and walked away, leaving Ava entirely alone with the wreckage of their friendship. The ultimate test of loyalty failed, and a storm of judgment ready to break over her head. The days following the confrontation became a masterclass in psychological warfare, an icy, suffocating isolation that Ava had never experienced before. Ella did not just retreat. She weaponized her pain and her high social standing to ensure Ava felt the full weight of her transgression. The shared paradise of the Banana Island villa transformed instantly into a gilded prison. Ella stopped speaking to Ava entirely, ignoring her presence in the corridors as if she were a ghost, a mere paid servant who had overstepped her boundaries. But the silence wasn't the worst part. It was the sudden, sharp shift in the social atmosphere. Word of the rift began to leak into their elite social circle, whispered through malicious, elegant voices over high tea and private gallery viewings. Ella ensured that Ava was quietly uninvited from upcoming gatherings, erased from digital group chats, and completely frozen out of the network of comfort she had momentarily enjoyed. The message was clear. You are an outsider, a charity case who bit the hand that fed you. Ava suffered through this emotional exile in absolute silence, her chest tight with a crushing sense of injustice. She had not sought wealth, nor had she planned to break a family bond. Yet she was being painted as a calculated gold-digging predator who had intentionally seduced her best friend's wealthy twin brother. Meanwhile, a more insidious threat began to materialize from the shadows of the Monroe family empire. While Liam was wrestling with his inner demons, trying to find a way to step up, a powerful antagonist emerged from the executive suites of the family corporation. Victoria Monroe, Liam and Ella's fiercely protective, status-obsessed older cousin who managed the family's public relations and legacy assets. Victoria was a woman who viewed human beings as either assets or liabilities, and she immediately classified the pregnant, single mother Ava as an existential liability to the Monroe name. Victoria didn't shout. She operated with cold, legalistic precision. She secretly initiated a comprehensive background check on Ava, tracking down every old financial struggle, every late rent payment from Ava's past, and compiling a dossier designed to destroy her credibility. Victoria confronted Liam in his private office, slamming the documents onto his mahogany desk with a triumphant sneer. "She is a professional victim, Liam," Victoria hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "She saw an opening, she saw your vulnerability, and now she is using a pregnancy to anchor herself to our family's fortune. If this gets out, it destroys the merger we've been working on for 18 months. You need to handle this, or I will." Liam's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening to a dangerous pitch as he demanded Victoria stay out of his personal life. But the seeds of doubt and institutional pressure had been aggressively planted. The situation worsened dramatically for Ava when Victoria took matters into her own hands, bypassing Liam entirely. She arranged a private secret meeting with Ava at an ultra-exclusive, dimly lit lounge in Victoria Island, a place where Ava felt utterly small and exposed. Victoria sat across from her, radiating wealth and malicious superiority, refusing to even offer Ava a glass of water. Without a single trace of empathy, Victoria slid a thick legal document across the table. It was a non-disclosure agreement coupled with a forced custody waiver, offering a lump sum of money in exchange for Ava disappearing from Lagos forever and surrendering all future parental rights to the Monroe family. "Let's be entirely realistic, Ava," Victoria said, her face twisted into a smug, mocking smile. "Look at yourself. You are a struggling single mother living from paycheck to paycheck. You cannot afford the life this child deserves. You don't belong in our world. Take the money, sign the papers, and let us raise the child properly, or we will tie you up in litigation until you have absolutely nothing left, not even your dignity." The sheer cold-hearted arrogance of the threat hung heavily in the air. An agonizing display of the villain's true face, leaving the viewers in burning suspense, desperately waiting for the moment this cruel, elitist machine would finally be exposed and dismantled. The atmospheric pressure inside the dim Victoria Island lounge reached a suffocating peak as Victoria Monroe leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with the predatory satisfaction of a villain who believed her victory was absolute. She tapped the heavy legal documents with a manicured fingernail, her smug smile widening as she waited for Ava to break, to cry, to sign away her soul for a life of quiet compliance. But Ava didn't reach for the pen. Instead, a profound, unwavering stillness washed over her. The years of struggling as a single mother hadn't made her weak. They had forged an unbreakable core of dignity. Slowly, Ava lifted her gaze, looking directly into the cold eyes of the woman trying to buy her future. "You think everything can be measured in assets and liabilities, Victoria," Ava said, her voice dropping to a calm, resonant whisper that vibrated through the quiet room. "But you cannot buy my child, and you cannot buy my silence. Keep your money. I am walking out of here, and I am keeping my baby." Victoria's face instantly contorted with vicious rage, her carefully maintained elite composure fracturing as she slammed her hand on the table. "You foolish, arrogant little girl. You will leave this city with absolutely nothing. I will personally see to it that you are ruined." But Victoria had entirely miscalculated. She didn't know that Liam had secretly followed her. Having discovered the missing dossier from his desk, Liam had tracked his cousin's movements, arriving at the lounge just in time to stand in the shadows, listening to every single word of Victoria's cruel, manipulative ultimatum. Just as Victoria raised her voice to deliver another venomous threat, the heavy doors of the lounge swung open, and Liam stepped into the light. His presence was terrifyingly formidable, his posture radiating a cold, lethal anger that made the entire room go silent. Victoria froze, her face draining of color as Liam walked directly to the table, ignoring his cousin entirely, and wrapped his arm protectively around Ava's trembling shoulders. "The only person leaving with nothing, Victoria, is you," Liam said, his voice like cracking ice. Victoria scrambled for words, her arrogant demeanor collapsing into panicked stuttering. "Liam, I was only protecting the family name. She's a gold digger, she's trying to trap you." Liam didn't let her finish. With a slow, deliberate movement, he pulled a recording device from his pocket, revealing that he had recorded the entire interaction, capturing Victoria's blackmail, corporate overreach, and illegal coercion in pristine detail. "You didn't protect the family, Victoria. You exposed your own corruption. As of this exact second, you are stripped of your executive title, removed from the family board, and blocked from all legacy assets. If I ever see you near Ava again, this recording goes directly to the federal authorities and the press." The complete unmasking of the antagonist was instantaneous. Victoria sat paralyzed, a pathetic figure of exposed greed, her eyes wide with terror and total humiliation as she realized her life of luxury and power had vanished in a single breath. She tried to apologize, reaching out a trembling hand, but Liam turned his back on her, guiding Ava out into the warm Lagos air. Justice had triumphed completely, shattering the elitist walls that had kept them in the dark. And for the first time in months, Ava could finally breathe, knowing the truth had set them free. The swift and unyielding hand of karma wasted no time in dismantling Victoria Monroe's life. Stripped of her corporate titles, completely cast out from the family board, and cut off from the vast legacy wealth she had once used as a weapon, she found herself an absolute pariah in the high society circles of Lagos. The very elite who once clamored for her favor now turned their backs on her, leaving her to face a life of isolation and financial ruin, a stark and bitter consequence for a woman who believed human souls could be bought and sold. Ella, too, faced her own quiet reckoning. Seeing the lengths to which Victoria had gone to destroy Ava, broke the spell of her own bitter resentment. Weeks later, Ella stood at Ava's doorstep, her proud posture humbled, holding a small baby blanket she had knit herself. Tears flowed freely as the two lifelong friends embraced, rebuilding their bond not on the fragile foundations of status or secrecy, but on the unshakable ground of absolute honesty and hard-won forgiveness. For Ava and Liam, the storm had finally passed, leaving behind a clean, open horizon. They did not retreat back into the shadows of Ikoyi or the hidden corners of the Banana Islands. Instead, they chose to build a life together out in the open air, rooted in genuine accountability and mutual respect. When their beautiful child was born on a soft, rainy morning, Liam held the baby with a reverence that proved he had finally let go of his fear of vulnerability. He had dismantled the rigid cage of absolute control he once lived in, choosing instead the unpredictable, beautifully chaotic reality of love and family. Ava looked out over the lagoon from their new home, no longer feeling like a forgotten single mother shrinking her world to fit into the margins, but as a whole, fiercely resilient woman who had stayed true to her principles and won this dramatic, emotional journey leaves us with a powerful, undeniable life lesson. True wealth is never found in the digits of a bank account, the exclusivity of a neighborhood, or the cold mask of control. True wealth lies entirely in our loyalty, our kindness, and the courage to show up for the people who matter most, even when the consequences terrify us. Karma has a brilliant mathematical way of balancing the scales of justice. Those who use their power to oppress and manipulate will eventually find themselves bankrupt in spirit, while those who stand firmly by their truth and protect the innocent will always inherit the ultimate triumph. What do you think about Ava's bravery and the shocking karma that found Victoria? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another deeply emotional, life-changing story. Until next time, remember to always lead with kindness and never let the world change your heart.